Live streaming. We are up and good on YouTube. I'm going to share the screen. All right. Looks like we are ready to begin. So just a reminder of our current custom of the day with respect to our services, as we have our prayer book streaming through a slideshow, both in the sanctuary or for you at home. I will be announcing page numbers for those of you here who have a prayer book and would like to follow along in our prayer book. And I also want to remind everyone that as I give cues in our service to please rise or please be seated, I want to make sure that everyone knows that I mean either rise in body or in spirit as you are able. And so I hope that our service, our time together, is a meaningful time for everyone, and that we are able to capture some of what it means to find Shabbat peace. We're going to begin our service on page 127. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand and wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. We'll continue singing together, Hine Matov, how good it is for all of us to be together this Shabbat. Page 128. Hine Matov u'manayim sheverachim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim sheverachim gam yachad. Hine Matov. Continue on page 130 with the words of Psalm 95 and 96, Lechu Neranana, that giving thanks to God for all of God's creation. continue welcoming Shabbat as we sing the words of the medieval poem Lecha Dodi. We'll join together on page 138 on verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. And as we reach the last verse, Boi B'Shalom, we'll rise to face the entryway to welcome Shabbat like a bride or a queen. Ya la 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 Dodi, ya la 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 Elikat Kala, ya la 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 Bnei Shabbat, Bnei Shabbat Tekavela, Shamo V'Zachor, V'Diborecha. I don't know how many times it's going to take to like be back in person again, but I love hearing people singing.
And you have wonderful, you're singing tonight.
Yes.
I was so glad when I called and they said they
We are going to continue on page 142 as we join together in singing Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruni L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruni L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem L'Shalom, Malachei Ashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Continue now with the lighting of our Shabbat candles. So if you have your candles at home and you'd like to join in, as these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us, as their brightness reminds us of generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We'll continue on page 144. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, me'alma divrach irutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, u'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, bagala, ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה Tushbechata v'nechemata Damiran be'alma v'yimeru. Amen. We'll rise for our call to prayer on page 146. Please be seated. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Oreyom balayla, golelor mipnei choshech, golelor mipnei choshech, vechoshech mipnei or. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night. Oreyom balayla, golelor mipnei choshech, golelor mipnei choshech, vechoshech mipnei or. Continue at the top of page 150. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai, our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. We'll rise together for Shema on page 152 and 153. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Please be seated. We'll continue on page 154. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha vishinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'b'lechtecha v'derech u'b'shochbecha u'b'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem. We'll continue on page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. We'll continue on page 158 as we join together singing Mi Chamocha, our prayer for freedom and redemption. Continue on the top of page 161. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Hashkiveinu Adonai, continue on page 164 and then on even-numbered pages thereafter with tefillah, and I'll invite everyone to please rise. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanorach, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei hakol, v'zocher chastei avot v'imahot, u'mevi geula livnei v'neihem, leman shemo be'ahava, melech ozer u'moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'ezrat Sarah. Ata gibor leolam Adonai, mechaye hakol ata rab lehoshia, mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim berofech olim, umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar, micha mocha ba'al gevurot umito melach, melech memit umechaye umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lehachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let these moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Please be seated. We'll continue on the top of page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. On page 177, God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. Continue with a prayer for peace on page 178, Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim leolam. Shalom Rav, all Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, all Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. We'll take a moment for our own quiet thoughts and prayers. Yehu leratzon imrei pi ve'egyol libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai Tzuri Begoali Yehu leratzon imrei pi ve'egyol libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri Begoali. We devote the next few moments of our service to hold those in our hearts who are in need of a prayer of healing, whether that is a prayer of healing for body, of mind, or of spirit. If there are those of you on Zoom who are thinking of someone and you'd like to share their name in the chat, I'll read it in a moment. And as I look your way, if you're thinking of someone who you'd like to share their name for our prayer of healing, please feel free to say their name as I look your way. Pat Adamson, Esther Greenwald, Ursula Hartunian, Johanna Woolman Kirby. And for all those we're holding in our hearts who are in need of a prayer of healing, we say, Baruch atah Adonai rofei cholim. Blessed is God who brings healing to those who are in need of healing. We'll turn together to page 371 as we join in Mishaberach. bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, a renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week, we have a kind of a fun Torah portion to talk about. This Torah portion is named after its lead antagonist, Parshat Korach. Korach was a really interesting person. He was a person who, in the Torah, we are told, is striving to challenge two primary positions of leadership. He's challenging not only Moses, being the prophetic leader who stands in front of the people and is able to confront God directly about questions of law and what the people should be doing on a regular basis, but he also challenges Aaron and his position as not only high priest of the people, but the whole institution of the priesthood. Korach says, among other things, aren't this people supposed to be a nation of priests? All of these people are holy. Why is it the two of you who place yourselves on pedestals so that you stand above the rest of us? All of us are essentially equal and deserve these positions of power. So now, the story in itself is interesting as it is. There's a rebellion. Korach recruits 252 friends, other leaders among the people of Israel. We know also about Korach that he's actually the oldest sibling of Moses' uncle. And so he believes, among other things, that he actually has a rightful claim as Bechor, as the firstborn inheritor of what was supposed to be the covenant, and therefore he's really supposed to be the person in charge, not Moses and Aaron. And so he brings up this rebellion, which is ultimately smashed. And the final straw is, in the Torah anyway, is when he brings fire pans forward and basically challenges Moses to an incense offering. I don't know how to put that, like competition, where all of the 252 of Korach's followers, and he and Aaron and the priests all bring fire pans, and they say, who's going to be accepted? God will let us know. God very clearly lets everyone know that Aaron and Moses are the ones who are supposed to be up front, and Korach and his followers are destroyed. So if that wasn't enough for you, though, the rabbis of the Talmud and of ancient rabbinic tradition, I think the specific place for this midrash that I'm about to tell you comes from the Tanhuma, which is another ancient midrash, tells us a little bit more about kind of the ambition of Korach. So among other things, Korach in the midrash is challenging Moses' legitimacy and is trying to prove a certain point. So he says, related to a law that we saw at the end of last week's Torah portion, there is a law that says that on every talit is supposed to have fringes, and that one of the fringes on your talit is supposed to be of a particular shade of blue called techelet. Today, we don't have any idea what this shade of blue is actually supposed to look like, and even though we have ancient instructions on how to make it, some of the ingredients have become obscure to history. We don't actually know how to read those recipes, and so it's useless. But anyway, on an ancient talit, or any four-cornered garment, you were supposed to see fringes, and that one of those fringes was supposed to be blue. So Korach, in this midrash, comes to Moses and says, okay, you say this law, according to this law, we're supposed to have one blue string. What happens if I produced an entire garment made out of these blue strings? Would I still be required by your law to have one fringe attached to it made of that particular color? And Moses says, that's the law, that's how it works. You have to have the single fringe of blue in order for it to be considered a kosher garment to wear. Korach gets frustrated and goes back to his followers, and the next day comes back to Moses and says, I have another one for you. You said that we have to have, from the same section of laws from last week, you said that we have to put a mezuzah on our house, on our doorposts. What happens if a house is entirely filled with Torah scrolls or books of holy writing? Does it still require a mezuzah? To which Moses says, that's the law that we received from God. You have to have a mezuzah on your doorpost, even if even if your house is entirely filled with scrolls and holy documents. So there are a number of rabbinic commentaries that look at this midrash. Well, the follow-up. Korach again gets frustrated, and the next day, Korach and his followers show up before Moses, all of them wearing entirely blue garments. And I realized that as I said that I'm wearing an entirely blue face mask, and that has nothing to do with why I chose this one for the evening. It was in my pocket. So, in any case, Korach shows up and is challenging Moses literally, visually. He's trying to prove his point to the people that Moses has essentially made everything up. That is the claim, that you've made this up. None of this really applies to us. God did not ask us for this. So those two actions specifically were meant to challenge Moses and Aaron's authority, and especially the second part where Korach is describing a house that is filled with holy texts, that needs to have a mezuzah on the door, that there are a number of rabbinic commentaries who are commenting on the midrash that say that the scrolls in that scenario are symbolic of the people of Israel in general, and that the mezuzahs on the doorpost represent Aaron and the priesthood, and that it should be enough that every one of us who has inherent holiness has the ability to make these kinds of connections with God on our own, that we don't need a priesthood. But if we did need a priesthood, I should be it. That's the way the rabbis see this argument, and it says something about Korach, and one of the things that we should always strive to kind of move ourselves away from, this particular tendency, and that is to look at other people and what they have, whether it's in positions of power or the way they look, or any other aspect of our lives where we might be jealous of something. There is a medieval text, I think from Rabbeinu Bachya, that talks about how that Korach's main flaw was jealousy. And he tried to frame his own jealousy in a way that made it seem like he was using a rational argument to present to the people, but in reality, he was only seeking power for himself in this particular situation. And like a number of character traits that we might possess, the rabbis, and especially Rabbeinu Bachya, believed that we could adjust the way we think about the world in order to change our own behavior. But jealousy, he argues, is the hardest one for any human being to overcome. That when we see something as our own, in our own self-interest, and we've committed ourselves to achieving a goal that someone else has preceded us in achieving, that even if we succeeded, Rabbeinu Bachya says, we'll have failed. One of the things that we have to challenge ourselves to do in these situations, and it is I think, particularly important when it comes to issues of jealousy, because it affects so much of how we live our everyday lives, is that when we are thinking about how we exist in the world, that we remind ourselves of something that Korach essentially left out of the equation. When Korach made his argument, he invoked the word holiness, kedusha, but what is interesting about the word holy, and I mentioned this a few weeks ago in my discussion about the Nazirite, holiness can essentially mean the word kiddush, kedusha, the thing that we say a blessing over, can mean a couple of things. Kedusha can mean to fill something with importance, with holiness, on one hand, and kedusha, on the other hand, can be something that it means keeping something entirely separate from everything else. When we become so interested in things that are outside of ourselves to the point where we devalue ourselves, that is a kind of kedusha that we don't want. We don't want to create a separation from ourselves and everybody else. The kind of kedusha that we are supposed to pursue, the kind of kedusha that leads to holiness, is when we are able to recognize our B'Tselem Elohim, our idea, our perception of ourselves that we are created in the image of God and that we are able to do things because of the gifts that we possess and not because of something that we are going to be able to match in any other person. That is not what B'Tselem Elohim means. B'Tselem Elohim means as we are created in the image of God, we have our own uniqueness, our own gift, and that we are each a miracle in that way, that we each represent the image of God and that we are all entirely different. I hope that we are able in our lives to be able to not pursue the kind of things that would cause us to see ourselves as anything less than that of created in the image of God, and that we use our special gifts always in pursuit not of our own, or not, I should say, not only of our own betterment, but that so we can work to better the world that we live in. Shabbat Shalom. We'll rise together for Aleinu on page 586. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, velo samanu kemishpechot adama. Shelo sam chelkenu kahem, vigor aleinu kechol hamonam, vanachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Please be seated. Page 591. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz. Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad. Ushemo echad. devote the next few moments of our service to honor the memories of those who we have loved and lost, holding first in our hearts David Cochran, for whom we are in a period of shloshim within 30 days of his death. And we also hold in our hearts those for whom this week and this Shabbat are a yahrzeit, or an anniversary of their death. William Bailey Heberton, Bert H. Perlmutter, Eddie B. Hyman, Maruha Kravitz Hefetz, Rena McDonald, Irvin Lewis, and Max Lewis. And if there are those of you on Zoom who'd like to share a name of someone you're thinking of for Mourners Kaddish, please feel free to type their name in the chat and I'll read it aloud in a moment. And if there's anyone here who's thinking of someone and you'd like to share their name, please feel free as I look your way to say their name. We say, Zichronam livracha, may the memories of our loved ones who have gone before us always be a blessing. We'll rise together as we turn to page 598 for Mourners Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chaye echon u'v'yom echon, u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mivarach le'olam u'olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal shmei d'kedusha b'richu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom mimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates heaven, may the one in the heavens on high who creates peace bring peace to us here on earth, for all people, for all Israel and all the world, and comfort to all those who are mourning. Together we say, Amen. Please be seated. First announcement I have for this evening is that we are looking for choir members. The plan right now is to think that the best is happening, that things are going to be such that we are able to have high holidays in person with everyone who wants to be here is here. We are trending in that direction. So with that hopefulness, as we are preparing for that now, Laura Becker is sending out feelers for people who are interested in joining the choir. So if you are interested, or if you know someone who might be interested, please, you can see Laura's email address here, or you can find this announcement in our weekly e-news. We are getting ready to roll on high holiday preparations. There is a sisterhood meeting on not this Saturday, tomorrow, but next Saturday on June 19th. It says, please join us for the installation of the new board, and to celebrate our ability to meet in person once again. We will join from 1 o'clock to 3 p.m. on Saturday at Joe Thompson's home for an outdoor get-together. We'll be following CDC guidelines, so we ask that members who are not fully vaccinated please wear masks and follow social distancing guidelines. If you need the address for Joe's house, it is in our e-news, or you can call the office to find out. Last announcement I have, our book club will be meeting in a couple of weeks to talk about Night in Shanghai by Nicole Monet's, Wednesday, June 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Just a little description of the book. In this stunningly researched novel, Nicole Monet's not only tells the forgotten story of black musicians in the Shanghai jazz age of the 1930s, but also weaves in the historical tale of Jewish refugees and Holocaust heroism little known in the West. Even if you haven't read the book, you should consider joining us because we always end up having really lovely conversations, and it might even inspire you to read the book afterwards. I think that's all I have. So we are going to join together in our concluding blessings over Kiddush, the good kind of Kiddush, and blessings over Challah, which I will use as my blessing for when I get home for dinner, and a blessing of our children. But first, if you have something to say Kiddush over, we'll join together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen l'chaim. Joe wants me to tell you that sisterhood will have some good noshas and great company. You should try to make it. All right, blessing for our children. Yisimcha Elohim ke'Ephraim v'chi Menashe. May you be blessed like Joseph's children, Ephraim and Menashe. Yesimech Elohim Kesara, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah. May you be blessed like the mothers of our people, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. We wish for all of our children to be blessed in finding the best version of themselves and always being proud of who they are. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's light shine on you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God's presence always feel near to you, and may you always be blessed with the most important gifts of wholeness and peace. Amen. And Motzi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Oh, that harmony is so good. We're going to join together for our concluding song, Prayer for Peace, Oseh Shalom. And I'll unmute everyone on Zoom, and we will get to say hello to everybody.
La
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.